There is a space in my heart where I find the truth. I find me in you, a truth beyond what you may see now. But when we are one, we bring more good about. No matter who or what you call yourself or where you come from, yeah. There is a place in this world with open arms right now. Welcome to love, welcome to peace, welcome to our community. And be who you are and let your light shine. We're so much more when we unite. You are welcome here. You are welcome here. See when new eyes allow and unfold, embrace and let go, trust the flow. There's a freedom in love when you follow your heart. Together we are stronger than we could ever be apart. No matter who or what you call yourself or where you come from, yeah. There is a place in this world with open arms right now. Welcome to love and welcome to peace. Welcome to our community. And be who you are and let your light shine. We're so much more when we unite. You are welcome here, and you are welcome here. And breathe in and out. Slowly feel all that's around you, and all that you feel, and all that you know. Let it go. Welcome to love, welcome to peace, welcome to our community. And be who you are and let your light shine. We're so much more when we unite. Yeah, when we unite. Oh, 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 when we unite. Yeah, yeah, when we unite. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. You are welcome here. Love is welcome here. And peace is welcome here. And you are welcome here.
Good morning. I'm Susan Zoller, a member of the ministerial team here at Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta, and I invite you to join me in saying our call to service. How I choose to think creates my personal experience. Therefore, I choose to think affirmatively. I choose to speak affirmatively. I choose to live affirmatively. Not only is my right, it is my responsibility as a conscious being. I allow myself to be used, guided, and available for the reawakening of everyone's magnificence. The moment is now, and I say yes. And together we say, and so it is.
And so it is. Thank you, Reverend Susan Zoller, wonderful staff minister here, part of a great team that helps support SLCA. We're so grateful for all of our staff ministers and practitioners. Good morning, everyone. I am David Alexander, the spiritual director here, and it's such a great honor to welcome each and every one of you as we reach out across the country and the world right now and creating virtual community. Thank you for tuning in today on Facebook Live, on YouTube. And if you're checking this out later in the week or later in the day at a time that's convenient for you, we're grateful for that too. So welcome, welcome, welcome. You're part of a spiritual community that is anchored in a 40-year history here in the greater Atlanta area, Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta, with a wonderful legacy, part of a larger movement of centers for spiritual living, committed to awakening humanity to its spiritual magnificence and creating a world that works for everyone. I am delighted to have each one of you tuning into our broadcast today. Please take a moment and share this broadcast if you're watching live with us so that other people might find us. Your news feed might be just the place where they get introduced to SLCA. We have several hashtags that we use regularly on Facebook, Twitter, etc. Use hashtag SLCA, hashtag You Belong, hashtag We Are CSL. That connects us to our larger movement. Any of those work, and we're grateful for you sharing the message of what's happening here in our community. A few announcements today that I want to share with you, let you know what's happening and how you can connect, grow, serve, and give. Always, we begin with our committed giving, ways to support this community. We're so grateful for each and every one of you that choose to contribute on a regular basis, have your automatic giving set up in a way that just comes out on a regular monthly or weekly basis. Thank you so much. And if you would like to change the rhythm or the amount that you're giving, or start a new regular gift, or give a special gift today, it's very easy. You see on the screen our text to give number. That's the best way to do it. Just text the gift amount that you would like to circulate to us to that phone number, and the system will respond and take care of the rest. It's all very secure. We don't see any of your bank information. If you want to send a check or do PayPal or some other method, please visit our website for those methods as well. And we're grateful for all that we receive today. On Tuesdays, every Tuesday evening, we have Twin Heart Meditation with Reverend Ursula Lentini, another one of our great staff ministers. We're grateful for her presence and her constant offering of this meditation practice. So if you're looking for some spiritual practice on Tuesday evening, that is where to find it. Register in the link on Facebook or in the chat today for more information. This Wednesday, we have been doing something throughout the year, I believe, almost 6 months now, of a Wednesday evening, Living the Science of Mind. This Wednesday will be the last Living the Science of Mind course for a while. We'll take a break for the summer. So get in this Wednesday for your last chance with Reverend Susan Zoller to do a deep dive discussion and exploration of these principles. You don't have to have come to any of the previous classes or read anything in advance. You're welcome to just jump in to the learning, and we'll pick it up again in the fall. So this Wednesday is your last chance to continue that spiritual education on Wednesday evenings, 7 p.m. Adult study continues to happen every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. That happens on Zoom and will continue on Zoom for some time. So please join us for that. We want you to know that coming up on June 10th, our wonderful partners and community members and wonderful leaders in the liberation movement of LGBTQI plus, our friends at Transformation Journeys Worldwide are doing a beautiful and powerful workshop entitled Be Strong Allies for Transgender, Nonconforming, and Non-Binary People in celebration and kickoff of Pride Month around the country in June. Info to sign up is in the chat, and we really encourage you to continue that education for yourself on how to be a good ally. Share this link in this event with any companies or any groups that you belong to, this is great training. It's not done from a religious point of view. It's done from a secular education point of view, and would be great for any company or group or association that you belong to. And this training will be having people participating all over the country at the same time. So please share that link with your colleagues and networks as you feel called to. And we're grateful for the work that Transformation Journeys Worldwide does in the world. And finally today, prayer. We never leave without the opportunity for prayer. Our practitioners are available to you. These individuals have been trained and steeped in the art and the practice of affirmative prayer to connect with you about anything that's going on in your life, anything that is weighing heavy on your heart and mind about your own circumstance or that of a loved one, a family member, etc. Please connect with a practitioner. If you have something you want to celebrate and just give thanks for and continue in the vibration of receptivity for, you can connect with a practitioner. And to do so, just let yourself be known in the chat that you would like prayer today with a practitioner, and one of our practitioners who are online watching with us on Facebook and YouTube will reach out to you, and we'll make sure that that happens. All right, my friends, it is Memorial Day weekend. We're so grateful for, we'll talk more about Memorial Day in the message, but we're grateful that you've joined us today. We're grateful that we're spreading this message and that we're creating community together. Remember, you belong here. You are welcome here. You are part of this growing family, and we're grateful for each and every one of you. Let's have a great morning together. Blessings.
No. Good morning by Carmen.
We all need a ray of light shining down, surrounding us. We are rays of light. We allow ourselves to shine. Up in the sky at night I wonder, do my tears of morning sink beneath the sun? She's got herself a universe gone quickly, for the call of thunder threatens everyone. Trying to remember where it all began. She's got herself a little piece of heaven, waiting for the time when earth shall be as one. And I feel like I just got home, and I feel like I just got home. We're gonna ray of light. We're gonna ray of light. We're gonna ray of do my tears of morning sink beneath the sun? She's got herself rest of the universe from quickly, for the call of thunder threatens everyone. And I feel incredible ray of light and gone for someone else will be there through the endless years. She's got us to the universe. She's got us to the universe. And beyond.
Good morning, SLCA. Please join me as I say an affirmative prayer, also known as a spiritual mind treatment. I will say these words in the first person, and I invite you to accept them for yourself or anyone else that may come to mind. If you'd like, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and know this with me. Truly, I know that there is a power and a presence in this universe that is indeed greater than we are. I know with all my heart that I am one with it. I know that I live, I move, and I have my very being in it. It is my life. So I know a greater expression of its love, its peace, its joy. I know that I can live boldly in and through and as it and begin a new story this day and always. I know that the Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta is blessed and a blessing to all who view, who enter its thresholds, who partake, who volunteer, all the practitioners, all the ministers. I know that our beloved Reverend Dr. David Alexander is blessed and is a blessing, and that his words fall on fertile ears. I know, and I know that this day is very, very good. And so, with a heart filled with love and gratitude, I release it into the law, for I know that there is a power that hears me and hears me always. And there's nothing for me to do except for let go and let God. And please join me by saying, and so it is. Peace and blessings.
With every prayer, I breathe the heart of God. I breathe the love of God through me. With every prayer, I breathe the heart of God. I breathe the love of God through me. As I open and allow, I know right here and now, I create a world where wonders never cease. With every prayer, I breathe the heart of God. I breathe the love of God through me.
Thank you, Penelope, our wonderful music director, for that beautiful anchoring. Thank you, practitioner Jean Bell, for that beautiful, beautiful affirmative prayer. And Angel, a little bit of Madonna and some special lighting effects going on. That was a lot of fun. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Angel. It's fun to connect online and to dance in our own space as things are happening in the service, but it is reminding me of the joy and the anticipation of coming together in physical community that we will do so on July 4th. And what a fun journey that's going to be as well. Good morning, everyone. It is such a blessing to be with you today as we emerge out of this pandemic experience. I find it poignant and poetic that it's happening for many people, whether that's personally going out, going to parties or going to movies. It seems like this weekend is the time that people are expanding their circle and their range of motion, if you will. I know that's the case for me and for my family, and it feels so refreshing. And as we do that, I find it again poignant and poetic, powerful, if you will, that it's happening on Memorial Day weekend. And that for us as a spiritual community, we have this journey from Memorial Day weekend to July 4th, Independence Day, to contemplate the ideas that I want to share with you in today's message, right? Boldly living a new story. Because that's where we are in humanity. We are in the process of emerging and deciding whether we want to live a bold new story or whether we want to live the same old story, right? And I'm guessing most of us tuning in right now have already made that decision, that there's something within you that even as I say that, you reject the notion of living the same old story. There's an energy and a vitality about saying yes to a bold new story for yourself and for our collective society. It is an exciting, exciting time. Part of Memorial Day is remembering those who sacrificed, those who served in the armed forces and gave their lives so that we might enjoy the freedoms that we enjoy today. I would like us to not only pause for a moment and remember those in our own family or friends and uncles and aunts who have served, or the lineage. If you're like me, I know my family history, and I can take you back to Civil War, to World War I, World War II, to in fact all the way back to the American Revolution, and members of my family that have served. To pause and to thank those ancestors for their sacrifice, but also to breathe into that space and even more so, remember who has made your life possible. Because that's what that act of remembrance is about, right? We have a way of being in American society that is preserved and protected, so to speak, by the sacrifice of those that have gone before us. But on an individual level, who has made your life possible? Who has sacrificed, not necessarily in military service, but in their everyday living, so that you might have breath, so that you might enjoy the freedoms that you enjoy, right? One of the things that we activate when we engage memory, remembrance is the law of growth and the principle of evolution, because we join with something to remember, to become a member again. We join something that is bigger than us. We expand our horizon of our individual self, and we become more. We become part of our ancestry. We become part of our legacy. We become part of something bigger. And the reason that we do is not for the sake of tradition, not for the sake of staying stuck in the old, not for the sake of keeping things the same, but so that our remembrance might fuel our evolution, that we might go forward in a way that is contextualized by that which has come before us, right? Say it plainly, so that we don't make the same mistakes, so that we don't stumble in the same places, so that we evolve, we learn, we grow, so that we might be better, right? So for me, one of the great acts of remembrance of Memorial Day is to rededicate myself and invite other people around me to rededicate ourselves to the work of peace building, right? To the work of personal liberation and emancipation from discord of every nature, to be a part of creating a world that works for all, because the highest form of respect we could give to those who lost their lives in military service is to ensure that we do not enter into further wars. That would be the ultimate remembrance. We remember the sacrifice you made, and we learned the lessons that created the context that created the war. And because we learned the lessons, we now are applying those lessons, and wars are no longer necessary because we're living at a higher level of consciousness, you see, a higher level of cooperation with humanity. But that has to begin with ourselves. And so this invitation today, a bold new story, wrapping up our month series on a holy, holy uprising. How do we do that? How do we end the wars that are in ourselves? By reconciling to our greater good, right? By reconciling to our greater good, by remembering and committing ourselves to the greater good that lives within us. And so we must live out our teaching. We must live out our philosophy. We must evolve, if you will, from positive thinking to positive doing and positive being, to not just a mindset, but an entire embodiment of a way of living in the world that embodies peace and harmony and justice and enfranchisement. And the way that we evolve in that direction is by changing the story, right? Ernest Holmes says that all of humankind is more or less following the pattern of thought in which it is immersed. All of humankind is more or less following the pattern of human thought in which it is immersed. In other words, we're stuck in patterns. We're stuck in regurgitating and repeating the same old things because that's what we've been given. That's what we adopted and accepted, and we continue it on, right? So living a bold new story means the capacity to stop the track of repetition and ask ourselves, what is it that we have accepted? And are we willing to question some of those things and adopt bold new ideas and set new patterns into motion, right? Principle is not bound by precedent. We have the creative capacity within us through our consciousness to create a new story. This is one of the most liberating things about this teaching. I remember when I was, excuse me, about 12 years old, actually 13 years old, and my mom's company had decided to, she had an opportunity to transfer. And she took that opportunity to transfer from Phoenix, Arizona, where I was born and raised up to that age, and moved to Albuquerque, New Mexico. I didn't even know where Albuquerque was on a map. I knew Santa Fe was the capital of New Mexico. I passed that test in grade school, but I didn't really recall or understand. Albuquerque to me was a phrase that Bugs Bunny used. I should have turned left at Albuquerque. But I remember being on that road trip, that 8-hour drive from Phoenix to Albuquerque with all of our stuff. And I remember thinking to myself, everything that I learned in Sunday school and growing up in this teaching, growing up in this philosophy about the power of our mind and affirmations in the story that we tell ourselves. And I thought to myself, I have an opportunity to write a bold new story. Whatever it is that I feel limited by, whatever I feel that has defined me, whatever I feel that has restricted me in any way, things that I've adopted about myself. I don't have to carry those forward because nobody knows me where I'm going. And the only me that they will meet is the me that I present. That's a profound awakening at age 13, right? And for a long time, I thought that that meant rejecting or simply not sharing parts of my story, because I didn't have to author them, right? I could just write something new. And it's true that you can. And we'll get today how the journey of wholeness takes us to a new evolution, a new awareness about those old parts of our stories as well. But here's the thing. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. So let me slow down here and just pause for a moment. Let me have you consider this. One of those powerful stories in the world is Genesis, first book of the Bible, right? Not necessarily the first written. We were sharing a little bit last week how the Israelite people were on a journey, having come out of the Exodus experience, knowing that they were actually in a place of relative peace and prosperity, knowing that they needed to tell the story so that they could pass it down. So they told the story of Exodus. They began to write down that story. And in the process of that, had the awareness that we actually need to go even further back. Where did all of this come from? Right? The beginning of the beginning. And so they began to write that story. And what's interesting about just this one little piece is the way it all begins. In the beginning was God. Right? In the beginning, God formed the heaven and the earth. And the earth was formless and void, and darkness covered everything. Those are the first two lines, paraphrasing, right? First two entries in Genesis. And then the third entry says what? And then God said, let there be light. And so if we pause and reflect on this, just this part of the story, we see that God doesn't have a voice until the author gives him a voice. Somebody's behind the pen, somebody's behind the tablet, somebody's behind the story as it's being written or as it's being narrated and told. And God doesn't have a voice until the author says, and God said. You and I are the authors of our life. You and I are the ones who have the power to say, I am, and to follow I am with whatever it is we choose to follow I am with. And the narrative that gets created not only impacts our own life, and this is an important key here, it also impacts everyone else's life around us. We create a collective narrative, you see. We're bound up in story. It's, in fact, all that we are. You are a 6 billion or trillion cells organized in different compartments, the compartments of the body system, right? The skeletal system and the nervous system and the reproductive system. I think there's 10 altogether. I'm not going to pass my biology test right here, right now, but there are 10 systems that make up who we are, and trillions of cells. And all of that is organized by a story. Who am I? What do I believe about myself? How do I move in the world? How do I function? What are my limits or my capacities? Where did I come from? Who are my parents? What is my story? Right? You are held together by a story. The world is held together by a story. We have this magnificent creative capacity to narrate that story in any way we choose. The problem is, we're not very creative with our story because we keep rewriting the same one. We do that on an individual level. We do that as a collective society. We keep rewriting the same story over and over again. And it turns out there's good reason for it. It's about the laws of consciousness and how they work, right? And we'll talk about those today. But have you ever noticed Have you ever noticed the patterns of old stories? Have you ever noticed the hero and villain, the white knight coming in and rescuing the damsel in distress? Have you ever noticed that every new movie that comes out of Hollywood actually has the same plot? Right? That there hasn't been an original story. Not even Disney, when he was doing Snow White and the Seven Dwarves and his original works, not even those were original, right? They were put into that format and in that styling for the first time, but he was borrowing ancient stories. We tell the same stories because there are patterns in our consciousness. How about this one? The pattern that says that the journey of a group of people, right? We see this a lot in the Bible. A group of people once oppressed, now free, then become the oppressor. You ever seen that story? A journey of a people once oppressed, now free, then become the oppressor. We see that story happen all the time throughout history, and every time I see it, I think, oh, like, what is up with that? Right? Right? How does that happen? Right? In First Samuel, in the book of First Samuel, it says the people who have experienced freedom through Samuel coming to rule and liberating them, but now he's getting old and his sons aren't following in his ways. So the people come to Samuel and they say, "You're old, your sons aren't following in your ways. Appoint us, give us a king, so that we might be like other nations and have a king who will rule over us and fight our battles for us." And Samuel tries to explain to them, no, this is a new opportunity. You're liberated. You've come to this new land and you've got your own capital and you don't need to do all of that. You're free. I liberated you from that. I liberated you from the battle of us and them. I set you free from those conditions and circumstances. You can choose to live a different way, in essence, he tells them. But they argue with him and they go back and forth and they say, no, we don't want all that. They actually say, we don't want all that. What we want is a king who will rule over us so that we might be like other nations and have a king who will fight our battles for us. And it's interesting in the story towards the end of that chapter, the author says, and then God speaks to Samuel and says, give them what they want. Let them have a king. Right? Give them what they want. The wisdom of the universe responds and says, by right of consciousness, give them what they want. Sometimes we argue for our own limitations in the story that we tell ourselves. And the universe has no choice but to say, okay, I'll give you what you want. You're really on a journey of liberation. You're really on a journey of freedom. But if this is the way you're going to keep framing it, I'll give you what you want. Right? And so what I want you to know today is as we take on the challenge to craft a bold new story for ourselves and for humanity, there are three key components that we have to do. We have to understand the journey with our history, which is better understood as the journey with our wound. The journey with our wound. I'll explain that in a moment. Secondly, we have to understand the condition of our mind. Are we conditioned? Are we conditioning our mind for the experience that we want to have? And then third, the desire of our heart. A bold new story is dependent on those three things. Journey with our history or our wound, condition of our mind, and the desire of our heart. And so we begin with understanding where we are. Our collective framing story, as some would call it, as Brian McLaren, the evangelical author, Brian McLaren would call it in his wonderful book, Everything Must Change. Some of you may be familiar with the work of Brian McLaren. I love that book because He talks about framing story and the power of framing story and the dysfunctions that our society currently has. He describes them in three ways. He says there are three primary dysfunctions that keep us from living out basically a world that works for everyone, right? It's not the words he uses, those are my words, but there are three dysfunctions. He says there's a prosperity dysfunction. And the prosperity dysfunction tells us that the story that we have around prosperity doesn't put limits on our ability to essentially rape the earth for its resources, for our own benefit, for our own prosperity, our own unlimited capital expansion. It doesn't put any limits on it. And then we have to protect that wealth that it creates from others. So we have a security dysfunction. And the security dysfunction says there's a world of us and them, that this harvesting that we're doing of our own good comes at the cost of protecting it from those that would take it from us, even though it really isn't ours anyway. And then there's an equity dysfunction. Right, that says some people are more worthy of this good than others, and that there's essentially a caste system. And these three dysfunctions, prosperity, equity, and security, are part of the machinery that keep a world locked in a story that says the world does not work for everyone. And I want to read just an excerpt from the book. When he talks about the effects of a framing story, if we could change our story. He says, we are guided by this framing story. You yourself as a person and our societies are integrated and motivated and driven by the framing stories that we tell ourselves as groups. These stories align the desires of billions of individuals through the three social systems, right? Prosperity, equity, and security, providing a framework in which we live and act out our desires. And then he says, if our framing story tells us that we humans are godlike beings with godlike privileges, intelligent and virtuous creatures outside of a limited environment of time and space without potentially fatal flaws, then we will have no reason to acknowledge or to live within any means, whether moral or ecological. Similarly, if it tells us that the purpose of life is for individuals or for nations to accumulate an abundance of possessions and experience a maximum amount of pleasure during a maximum number of minutes of our short lives, then we will have little reason to manage our consumption. If our framing story tells us that we are in a life and death competition with each other, that only the fittest will survive, that each species and group is in a violent struggle to outcompete and gain independence and safety and dominance over all others, then we will have little reason to seek reconciliation and collaboration and nonviolent resolutions to our conflicts. If it tells us, if our framing story tells us that we are simply a mass of atoms in a complex and ultimately meaningless fermentation and decaying process, that there is no ultimate purpose to existence, no higher value to our story, then we will have little reason to seek transcendence. But if our framing story tells us that we are free and responsible creatures in a creation made by a God, a wise and loving God, and that our Creator wants us to pursue virtue and collaboration and peace and mutual care for one another and all living things, and that our lives can have profound meaning even if we as we align ourselves with God's wisdom and character and dream for us, then our society will take a radically different direction, and our world will become a very different place. That's the power of framing story. And that's the opportunity that we have to live a bold new vision, to live a bold new reality, to live a bold new story. That's the opportunity that our entire collective society is in right now. As we come out of the pandemic, what kind of world do we create? What kind of lessons do we take from the past? What do we learn in terms of equity and prosperity and security about how we belong to each other? One of the reasons I use Bible stories so much is because the key narrative is twofold. It's one of personal liberation and two of connection of our sacred covenant that we belong to each other. That you as an individual and as a group of people are meant to be free, but that freedom comes with the responsibility that says you belong to each other. You can't have that freedom unless you understand how tied you are to the liberation of everyone else. From Genesis to Revelation, that's the entire thing. It doesn't have anything to do with sin and being bad and God rescuing us, and all of those things are distracting narratives, manipulations of cultures and people over time. Underneath all of it, there is a thread. You and the group that you belong to are meant to be free, and your freedom is tied to the liberation of everyone else. So let's begin our journey. 3 parts I said today. The journey with our wound or our history. Our stories represent patterns, and patterns repeat themselves when wounds aren't healed. Whew. I don't have my bell near me today. It's over on the other side of my desk. Patterns repeat themselves when wounds aren't healed. The patterns that we see in race relations in the nation, the patterns that we see in equity gaps, the patterns that we see in all of those ills and isms of the world, the patterns that we see in war, the patterns that we see of dysfunction, the patterns repeat themselves when wounds don't heal. Why? Because we're on a journey of liberation and emancipation. And in order to advance on that journey, you have to heal from your wounds. You have to learn from whence you came. You have to understand that where you tripped, there was a lesson in that tripping, right? Sometimes we think that we can get liberated from the condition, and we can by creating a new story. Like I said, for my own self, I remember as a young child getting liberated from the condition that my father wasn't involved in my life. My father wasn't there. He was an absentee father. And I got liberated from the condition of that by telling myself a new story. But I didn't get free from the wound. What I got by telling a new story was in a place healed enough and anchored enough in my own stability that I could come back full circle to that wound and address it from a new angle. You don't leave the wound behind. You might put it aside for a moment so that you can focus on yourself, get yourself on the right footing, but then it will always come back. It will always come back and say, what about now? No, not ready? Okay. What about now? What about now? Until you get to a place where you can speak to your wound without being hurt. You can say, yeah, that happened. And here's who I am because of it. Here's what I learned. Here's how I grew. Here's how I've integrated, right? Many of you know me. For myself, I came full circle on that particular wound when I discovered I was having a son, right? Because for me, it was the opportunity. It became so clear spiritually that I was here to heal the wound of absentee fatherism that existed for 3 generations on my father's side. And so now I'm able to say, yeah, my father wasn't here for me, and his father wasn't there for him, and his father wasn't there for them, for him. But I am here for my children. And this is what it looks like to be in radical reconciliation with the journey of your wound, the journey of your history. We as an American society continue to face the same challenges in race relations because we have not healed from the Great War that divided us in 1860. We keep trying to write new narratives. We keep trying to write stories that avoid it and deflect from it. We keep trying to tell ourselves lies about our exceptionalism and how all those things are in the past. And it didn't matter that we almost annihilated an entire race and we enslaved another because we are exceptional beings. Our freedom, our liberation, our independence. Again, remember, we're on a journey from Memorial Day to Independence Day. That space for us collectively as humanity, as westernized United States of American collective consciousness, that journey must be a reconciliation of where we've come from in order to truly attain our freedom. We have to start telling the truth, right? Which is why we at Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta are doing the work that we're doing, right? In our justice ministry, in our recovering from the lie of whiteness. That's why we're inviting people around the country to join us in that work, because we understand the power of our liberation, the power of our ability to create a new story is anchored in us having a reconciled journey with where we've come from. If you don't heal the source of the wound, the best that you can do is hope for incremental improvement to become a slightly better version of your old self. But the opportunity for reconciliation will always be there. The second aspect of writing our new story is the condition of our mind. And the condition of our mind is about the training of our consciousness, is about the mental focus and clarity that we are asked to create, that we have to be conditioned for prosperity. We have to be conditioned for health and wholeness. We have to be conditioned for the relationship that we desire. We have to be conditioned in a way that we are affirming and acknowledging and creating space that says, I am worthy of health and wholeness. I'm worthy of prosperity and well-being. I'm worthy of a healthy mind and a liberated spirit. Our minds are conditioning machines. And so it's our duty to condition our minds in a way that keep us open to the possibility of the life that we are meant to have. The third aspect of writing our new story is the desire of our heart. And the desire of our heart is about that spiritually, that not the ego mind of what do you want, right? But what does God, what does Spirit want for you? When you get quiet and still and truly listen, right? Because sometimes when we're only doing the incremental work of creating a better version of ourselves, which oftentimes include dodging and hiding and deflecting from our wounds, creating that kind of better version of ourselves keeps us from catching God's vision for ourselves. God's vision for you, Spirit's vision, the universe's vision, however you want to frame it, God's vision for you is not a better version of your wounded self. God's vision is a liberated vision, free and emancipated from discord of every nature, a goal that is sure to be attained by all. God's vision is wholeness. But God's vision requires for you to co-sign on a pathway of transformation. Whew. God's vision for you requires that you be the co-signer on a journey of transformation. It means when I sign up and say, yeah, I want that. Yes, I want to listen to my heart's desire. Yes, I want that wholeness. Yes, I want that liberation. I am co-signing on a journey of my own transformation. I'm willing to uncover every rock and look at everything and look at every pattern of the past and learn what I need to learn from it, be on a journey with my wounds so that I can be liberated and I can be open to the conditioning of my mind so that I might be my best self. I'm on a path of transformation. I've co-signed on it. I'm willing and able to do this work, you see. That is where the power of creation and the power of our mind to write a bold new story lives. The possibility of the unlimited possibility of our lives is always up to God. But the probability is up to you. Ooh. Let me say that again. The possibility is always up to God. The probability is up to you. You make it probable by co-signing and signing up and being on the journey into your new life. And so, beloveds, what I'm saying is this. what I'm inviting us into as individuals and as a community is to say, are we bold enough to create a story of a world that works for everyone? Are we bold enough to create a story as members of this collective society that is willing to look at its dark past and learn from its issues of race relations and white supremacy? Are we bold enough? If we're bold enough to say that we're authoring a new story, right? One that takes radical responsibility for where we have been and harnesses it for the trajectory of where we can go. What if we were bold enough to go beyond being just social justice warriors fighting the shadows of the past, but radical racial reconcilers that fashion a world of justice and wholeness anchored in the dignity of everyone's worth? What if we were more than people seeking individual fulfillment through right relationships, health, and prosperity and creative contributions, but we were boldly accepting our role as ever-evolving attributes of the divine, here to make manifest the glory of the divine through our own self-expression and the full manifestation of true self-reliance, as Emerson taught, which is not independent isolationism, but true self-reliance, which requires the moral obligation and awakening of our obligation to one another. And that knowing that is the thing that makes us free. What if we are willing to be authors of a bold new story for all of humanity, and that the demonstration is written on the pages of our daily lives? I believe this is what Ernest Holmes, our founder, was speaking about when he gave his address at Asilomar, the Sermon by the Sea, when he said, it would be great and wonderful indeed if a group of persons who would arrive on this earth who were for something and against nothing. He said this would be the sunum bonum, or Latin for the highest good of human organization. Find me one person who is for something and against nothing, who is redeemed enough not to condemn others out of the burden of his own soul, and I will find another Jesus, another Savior, an exalted human being. Find me one person who no longer has any fear of the universe or of God or of man or of anything else, and you will have brought to me someone in whose presence we may sit, and all fear shall vanish as clouds before the sun. Find me one person who's redeemed in his own soul, so that he or she may become my redeemer. Find me someone who has given all that they have to love without morbidity, and I will find the lover of my soul. Is this not true? He says. Why? Because they will have revealed to me the nature of God and proved to me the possibility of all human souls. And finally, my favorite part of his address of the Sermon by the Seas, he says, show me 1,000 people who know this and know how to use it, and the world will no longer be famished. Find me 1,000 people who know this and know how to use it, and the world will no longer be famished. Why? Well, because we have awakened to our moral obligation to one another. We will have understood that the quest for our own liberation and freedom is tied and bound to the liberation of all others, and that the vision for a world that works for all includes our personal development and moral awakening. My friends, this is the bold new story, the bold new living that we are committed to at Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta, through Centers for Spiritual Living and through all of our partners and collaborators, and through each of you. This is the bold new story that we make possible for every new person that finds this community, who walks in the doors for the first time, or finds us online on Facebook or YouTube for the first time. This is the possibility we offer them. And I am so honored and grateful to be part of this journey together. Let me close with this. From The Science of Mind by Ernest Holmes, it says this: a new light is coming into this world. We are on the borderland of a new experience. The veil between spirit and matter is thin. The invisible passes into visibility through our faith in it. A new science, a new religion, and a new philosophy are rapidly being developed. This is in line with the evolution of the Great Presence, and nothing can hinder its progress. It is useless as well as foolish to make any attempt to cover up this principle, to hold it as a vested right of any religion, sect, or order. The truth will out itself. The Spirit will make itself known. Happy are we if we see these things, which from the foundation of the human race have been longed for by all aspiring souls. Happy are we if we see these things, which from the foundation of the human race have been longed for by all aspiring souls. Let us see this great possibility for ourselves and for one another as we move from Memorial Day to Independence Day, crafting a new story for ourselves and for all of humanity by dedicating ourselves to doing the work. For this, I am so deeply grateful and thankful for each and every one of you. Peace and blessings.
Awesome, Reverend David. Oh my goodness. I love it. So now, join me as we say our grateful giving, as we live a new story boldly. I live in a universe of abundance. As I freely and joyfully give, I join in the divine flow, and all that I share with life returns to me multiplied abundantly. And so it is. Live boldly, SLCA. Peace and blessings.
Are we bold enough to live a new story? We envision a world that works for everyone and for all of creation. You see all people, all beings as expressions of God. We see a world that works for everyone. We envision a world that works for everyone and for all of creation. We see all people, all beings as expressions of God. We see a world that works for everyone. We envision a world that works for everyone and for all of creation. We see all people, all beings as expressions of God. We see a world that works for everyone. We see all people, all beings as expressions of God. We see a world that works for everyone. We see a world that works for everyone. We see a world that works for everyone.